All right, welcome everyone to our CEO Roundtable. If you have not joined a CEO Roundtable in years past, you're going to have a lot of fun with us tonight. This is part of our YAY program with Female Strong, and our YAY program is for the Young Entrepreneurs Academy, which is an all-girls program that we host out of Female Strong, and we have 14 amazing students in that program right now. They've been in that program since October, and it's 6 months long. So it's a pretty grueling process, but these students are amazing, and you'll meet them all tonight. And part of our program is hosting a really amazing panel discussion with female founders and CEOs and leaders in their industry. So tonight we're here together to talk all about what it means to be a woman in the food industry, especially a CEO or a female founder or owner of a company in the food industry. So I just want to welcome everyone. My name is Sarah Sleevey, and I'm the program manager here. Couldn't be more proud to work with Female Strong. And we're going to get started with our discussion, which will be moderated by the one and only Laurette Rondenet, who is not only Female Strong's biggest cheerleader, she's also one of our founding board members, and her support has played an absolutely critical role in helping us spread our mission, achieve great things, expand our staff, and so much more. And Laurette also happens to be the owner and CEO of Edlong Corporation, which is a very innovative and globally recognized leader in dairy and dairy-free flavors. And it's the industry's only certified woman-owned flavor house, which is pretty incredible. So I'm going to pass it over to Laurette, and she's going to tell us about our other panelists, and then we'll dive into a discussion featuring our YAY students. So make sure you're popping into the chat to share any of your comments or questions, and we'll get to them if we can. But tonight we'll really feature our panel of speakers and our amazing YAY students. So Laurette, I'm going to pass it over to you. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you, Sarah. And you're so calm, cool, and collected. Nobody knows that right before we got on, I had no microphone and you couldn't hear me. So we got through that. Yay. So Sarah, I was thinking you were asking me to kind of share a little bit of a story of why Female Strong is so important to me. And I pondered that thought, and really I came to thinking about my mom. So my mom is 88 and she was born in 1934, and kind of grew up in the era, raising children in the 50s, 60s. She had 7 kids, so raised children for a long time. And she would also often share with me, I'm the youngest of the 7, and she would share with me that in that era, there was no choices for women, that really your only choice was to be a mom, more or less. And college wasn't a thing that was really offered to many people then. So she was a total trailblazer. And I think when I was in 3rd grade is when she went back to school, and none of my friends' moms were going back to school. They were all stay-at-home moms. And my mom really was very intelligent, and she really wanted more stimulation in her life. Pretty much she was done being a mom by that time. She'd been doing it for like many, many years. And she would often tell me, don't ever be dependent on a man. Find your own life, your own path. I think she knew a divorce was looming in her future, and she was kind of trapped because she didn't really have any choices. So she went on to go to the University of Chicago and get her master's in social work. She became a Jungian analyst. And at some point during that, my dad had said to her something like, there's only enough room for one successful person in this house, which was not the most supportive thing to hear from your husband. And I just think it's a life lesson of, well, first of all, who you marry is very important. And second of all, of really, being able to stand on your own 2 feet, and of course, being in relationships that are supportive of that. And she had a very, very successful career, and really taught me the importance of really becoming a professional and doing what you love, most importantly. So I feel strongly about supporting these young women, and I'm so excited to meet them for the first time tonight. Because this is, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And this is where we try to really help role model for these young women and support them as best we can. So that was my thoughts on why it's an amazing program, and we're so glad you guys are all here. So with that, I can't wait to meet our panel. So we're going to have these guys introduce themselves. Amazing women, read a lot, heard a lot of podcasts, been immersing myself in their businesses, and they're all fantastic. And the fact that we're doing a food industry CEO roundtable is a first, and I love that we're taking an industry and going that route. I think this is really cool. So these two are sisters, and would love to even hear about how it's like working with your sister, because I've worked with many of my sisters in the past. So that's really fun. So Jacqueline and Mary Catherine, introduce yourselves, please.
Thank you, Laurette. My name is Jacqueline Scala. I am the older sister, but I'm one of the co-founders of Freight to Plate, and I go by the Hunter, which when we go into more about our business, really, we are a woman-owned and family-owned company that brings fresh produce and year-round fresh produce to all communities. And so as the Hunter, I like to seek out different communities that need our services and then figure out all the ways that we can help bring all this fresh produce to them. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
That's so cool.
Hey, everybody. My name is Mary Catherine Scala, the younger sister. And I go by the Gatherer. Jacqueline and I started our entrepreneurial journey together at the peak of the pandemic. So Freight to Plate is really a COVID baby of ours. And it all stemmed from us wanting to help a single community that was, an area that has been forgotten, and they don't have access to grocery stores, let alone fresh produce year round. So it all started with trying to help that one community. And the more we learned different ways of how we could bring year-round, fresh, clean, nutrient produce to that one community, we just kept building on that. And now we are taking that idea and putting it into all communities, no matter where they are. We want to see fresh year-round food be grown there. And as the gatherer of our duo, I really focus on building partnerships, because those are really key, especially when we're talking about food and feeding people. Building partnerships is so critical, and that's really where I thrive. So it's about bringing people together through food.
I loved listening to your guys' podcast, and you were talking about the small size of the freight, and it's equivalent to, like, what did you say, 2.5 acres, and the amount of food that you can produce all year round in these food deserts that you called it. I thought that was it's so intriguing.
Yeah, well, agriculture is an industry that hasn't seen really big shakeups in the industry for years. And, we're learning more and more about different ways that we can bring agriculture to urban centers. And one of those ways is growing in shipping containers and growing vertically. So our shipping container model, we grow 2.5 acres worth of produce in that 320 square footprint. So essentially these farms can go anywhere, whether it's the top of a building, underneath Wacker Drive. They're really flexible that way.
And they're beautiful. I mean, the ones I saw on your website, you paint them and they're beautiful. It's like artwork. So, you think of a freight and you're like, oh, maybe you want that in your neighborhood, but this is like art. It's
Absolutely.
Really,
You see the shipping container as a blank canvas and a billboard, basically, to bring your community together through art.
It was very cool. Okay, well, thank you so much. And next we have Julia Stamberger. Hi, Julia.
Hi, Laurette. How are you doing?
Good to see your face. That was funny in the prep call there. So yeah, take a minute and introduce yourself too.
So I started building food companies about 20 years ago. One of the things that got me first into the food industry and building companies there was I was brought into United Airlines as an entrepreneur in residence when they were going through bankruptcy in the early 2000s. And it's really hard to run an airline and make money. There's just so much pressure on your costs, whether that be from fuel prices that continually fluctuate, union agreements, and all sorts of other things. So they were looking for other ways to make money in flight. And I was working on creating an in-flight merchandise program when they ran into some real issues with food. And they were trying to go through their caterers and offer fresh sandwiches and salads for sale in flight. And the problem was they couldn't predict demand, and they had the better part of a day to sell through the food. So there was either too much or too little, and they couldn't meet the mark. So my proposition was, well, can we do that with shelf stable food? You know, cocktail snacks, liquor minis, those get reprovisioned back on the plane. If we can extend the shelf life of food and, you know, make it food that people want to eat, clean label ingredients, et cetera, what is possible, then maybe that would work better. And it turns out it would. So I launched the first airline snack box program in 2004, and then it worked for United, and I saw airlines copying, but badly. You know, you
I
can't just
ate
knock
many
over.
of those. I just got to tell you, traveled like a mad woman, and that was it was a great creation because there was no way to have, you know, kind of a higher protein snack on a plane. It was
Yeah.
needed.
Well, I ended up launching all of the ones in North America. And, you know, we got those really, you know, growing as the backbone of the airline food service industry, because they could, you know, keep something that was on for months that at the same time was still, you know, better tasting, clean ingredients, better nutrition, more protein, to your point, Laurette, than some of the fresh options they could provide. So to do that, you know, the options weren't just sitting there. You know, you mentioned what's possible in agriculture. Well, what's possible in food? You know, I would have conversations with manufacturers and say, can we do better than all of these additives in this sliced turkey pepperoni? And they're like, oh yeah, we could take them out and use celery salt. I'm like, why don't we do that? That sounds good. And they said, oh, well, you know, we developed it for Canada once upon a time and nobody really wanted it. And, you know, why change? You know, things are working well as they are. And I'm like, no, 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 no. There are lots of reasons for change. So let's start there. So anyway, that, you know, led me into the food industry and the heart of it, because I worked with dozens of manufacturers to create the right products to be able to fit there. And then I scaled a number of food companies after that. The Planting Hope Company was founded in 2016 when we saw the rise of the flexitarian, we call it, which is more people who are just simply incorporating more plant-based food into their diets. They're not leaving animal proteins or becoming vegans, but they are eating more plant-based. And it's for a lot of reasons, you know, health, wellness, nutrition, sustainability, animal welfare, planet welfare, whatever it might be. But the issue is that in a lot of the large categories like plant milk, and people are leaving products that are extremely nutritious like dairy milk, and they're going to products like almond milk, which are effectively flavored water. They have no nutrition and they're bad for the planet. So, you know, shouldn't there be an alternative that is super sustainable as well as nutritious as dairy milk? And so that was one of the categories we decided to tackle at the Planting Hope Company. And we spent about 5 years and a couple $1 million developing the world's first sesame milk, taking one of the most sustainable crops on the planet and turning it into one of the most nutritious shelf milks that also, you know, has equivalent protein to animal protein in dairy milk.
And I learned something new when I was researching you. I did not know that, and I should. I'm a food scientist. I should know that. I definitely knew that almond and oat milk. What's the term? Is it greenwashing? That there's a greenwashing that we think things are healthy and nutritious, right, but sometimes that's not truly the case. So it sounds like absolutely a novel idea that makes so much sense.
Well, we saw it across the board. You know, oat milk, it's the Coca-Cola of the plant-based milk world. You know, the way that oats are processed enzymatically creates maltose. Maltose has a 105 GI index. A can of Coke has a 75 GI index. It's a super spiky sugar that's not good for you. So, you know, oat milk, it performs well in coffee, but it's not much better. We did it with other things too, like the chip category. Veggie straws, they say veggie. That's as much veggie as is in veggie straws is the word veggie. They're effectively cold French fries with ketchup in them for color. That's it. They're deep fried potato slurry. So we created Mosaic's chips that are pop chips with real veggies as the #1 ingredient. The chip pop surrounds the veggies. You get protein and fiber and a delicious chip all at once. So that's what we do at the Planting Hope Company. We're focused on pantry staples, the products that people use every day, the products you can buy in grocery stores that work in food service. So there are other ways to get them to customers that work on airlines and other things. And we chose very intentionally to go public rather than finance through venture capital after we ran through our, you know, kind of angel and developer development capital about 18 months ago. And when we did, we had the opportunity to remake our board and chose to do it with an all-women board of directors, which thus made sense. 90% of the customers who bring new products into the home are women. They're the ones who are making those decisions and bringing them in. And what shocked us is we cannot find evidence of another all-women public board of directors that came before us. That's
interesting. That is really interesting.
And we also have an all-women C-suite, and that was again intentional because of our customer. I had 3 male co-founders, but one of the big issues with women-owned business certifications and WeBank is it is only created for single-person owner-operators. You cannot effectively scale as a certified woman-owned business if you take outside capital. It's very, very challenging because of the requirements for vetting that. So I've never been able to certify one of my businesses.
That's an issue. We should talk about that offline sometime because
it's a huge issue. It is an absolutely huge issue, and it's extraordinarily disappointing because it cuts out real women, owned and managed businesses from being able to, get some of the opportunities that are available.
It's counterintuitive to what they're trying to accomplish, as you mentioned that.
I try to stop people from messing with the system, which I completely agree with. I've seen people abuse minority contracting and other things before,
Right.
Absolutely. But it cuts out the fast growth, large scale. It cuts women out of opportunities, to really grow and create larger businesses. So yeah, another topic for another day. But we decided to at least be as visibly women-led and managed as humanly possible.
That's cool. I think I kind of try to lean Atkins, old word, or keto and low sugar, because I'm a believer in that. And I think everybody's bodies are different and, whatever, but it's hard to find, especially in the milk section, anything that's lower sugar. So I think that's pretty intriguing. I have a podcast called Owning Your Legacy, and just one of the recent ones that we did was Egg Life, which I thought was another amazing company. So using eggs to make tortillas, so then you're having low carb tortillas. So I love the innovation and the creativity. I think it's awesome.
Very
and
cool.
Next, thank you, Julia. We have Teresa. And
I am like the sugar queen, so
yes, I know. And you know what? We got to have it all. You got to have an indulgent moment too.
Exactly.
There's a time you got to have a moment, and like the little bite, that's okay. That's totally
right.
good. Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me here. My name is Teresa Ging. I'm the CEO and founder of Sugar Bliss. We are a woman and minority owned and certified bakery in downtown Chicago. I started Sugar Bliss in 2007, so we're almost 16 years old. Previously, actually, I lived in Texas. I came to Chicago. I went to University of Chicago. I majored in economics and statistics, and went on to doing investment banking at Bear Stearns. And then I did private equity for our former governor at his firm, GTCR. And then I ended up working a couple years in equity research at Credit Suisse, ironically focusing on food service companies, food retail, and packaged food, not knowing that I'd go into packaged food. So I did about 6+ years in finance. And then one long day, one of my friends was sifting powdered sugar to make cupcakes. And that was kind of like my aha moment. And I left the industry, went to Paris and enrolled in pastry school. So I did pastry school for a couple months in Paris, and then I came back to Chicago. And I just thought there was no place to buy a cupcake or any local baked goods in downtown. And, when I was in finance, when it was someone's birthday, we'd just take them out for lunch. And I was like, no one's getting cake or anything like that. And I don't even have a huge sweet tooth. I saw that there was a business opportunity. And so I started Sugar Bliss in 2007 and opened the retail store in 2009. In the heart of Chicago, winter, everyone vowed off, New Year's diet and during the recession. So we had our first store in downtown, and then we only did cupcakes, and we had over, 25 to 30 varieties. And then over the years, we added cake pops, French macaroons. We have gluten-free vegan cupcakes. We have cookies, brownies. We do ice pops. We do we have over 200 products. And then this past July, we just launched 4 cookies into Walgreens. So we're in 30 Walgreens, and then we're expected to add on another retailer and food service this year. So kind of growing my business into a different direction from retail store to retailers.
That's really cool. That's a pivot. And I got to tell everybody listening, you got to watch Sugar Bliss on Instagram. It's really fun. You had one just recently making a macaroon that was like how complicated that is. Wow.
Yeah, so I'm also our social media person for the moment. So I was excited that, I was excited that we got 5,000 views on that when I created it. You never know when you do a reel, how many people are going to like it and stuff. So, but yeah, I mean,
such a perfect segue into, I think, our first question. Because I hear you. I'm like, the social media thing is a little new to me, but it's crazy. It's yeah, you don't know. Like I just posted one for my son's birthday that did personally make me teary, but it went like through the roof compared to other stuff. And it's like, how does that, what's the magic? You just never really know. But yeah, that one was really good. So the question kind of somewhat that relates to that. And so we're going to do a couple questions with us as a panel, and then we're going to open it up to our Yay girls in a few minutes here. And there's no way I can get through all the questions that Sarah gave me, because then they're all really good. But I think the one that I really like is about perfectionism. And so perfectionism is kind of, definitely gets all of us, and particularly when we're young women. So what advice would you guys give to our young Yay entrepreneur women on how to kind of combat perfectionism, or any advice on that? Jump right in.
I mean, I can start. I thought about that question a lot. It's kind of like a trick question, like what's your strongest or weakest,
Yeah, maybe both ways.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I learn every day is a new day at Sugar Bliss. I mean, I'm constantly problem solving. I constantly learn from our mistakes. And I feel like there's no perfectionism. I mean, even like when we frost our cupcakes, like I think one of these has like a little bit of crumb to the side, I'm just saying is that like, it is, I don't think you can go through life like being perfect, or in that respect. I mean, I'm sure the other ladies can jump in on that, but I think that the best way to grow, and I've been doing this for like 15 years, is learning from your mistakes and doing it better. I opened my first store 15 years ago, and then the second store, I was like, okay, we need brighter lights this time. And we got super bright lights. And I was like, okay, we need to go the other direction. But I mean, there are just certain things that I've learned owning a business, whether it's getting capital financing or packaging or whatever, I think you're constantly learning from your mistakes. And I think it's okay not to be perfect. That makes you an even better person.
Totally agree. And even like your example of your cupcake with the crumb, it's like, it's real though. It's authentic. It's not photoshopped.
And
Yeah, I'd like to draw a distinction here though. It is okay to make mistakes, but it is also important to get things right. There's a difference between, perfectionism as in taking something to the nth degree and obsessing over it, that's not good. But if you're doing something like making food products, you can't accidentally get an allergen in there or make someone sick, or, you have to get things right. You have to think it through. You have to execute. My dad was always like this, right? Like something hard to get a ding and he'd immediately want to fix it. And I'm like, why? And he said, because there's a right way to do things, right? And he's right. There is a right way to do things if you're running a business. But at the same time, it is okay to make mistakes, because every entrepreneur makes mistakes. And you'll find that if you go and you start working with investors in your future and you're like, come invest in me, and you've had a mistake in your past, let's say you had a business that didn't work out. There are two ways to look at it. One, you made an enormous mistake, you wasted some money, or you learned a lot. It was an education. And because there's one thing to make a mistake once, it's another thing to make a mistake twice. And people who make mistakes in business are unlikely to do that again. So from an investor's perspective, you're actually a little bit more investable, right? Because you made those mistakes on somebody else's money and you're not going to do it again. So it's important to get good mentors who can help you and to help to advise on, how to learn from their experience so you don't have to make those mistakes yourself. But at the same time, I want to parse that issue because I think it's important to understand that there are two different sides of things.
Right. I think I would love to hear maybe you guys talk about a mistake that you've made and what you learned from it. So either
There's so many.
I know, right? I know. I was thinking of Jacqueline or Mary.
Mary, do you want to fill?
Well, the list is so long, especially, Jacqueline and I, relative to these other two wonderful women that are on the panel, are young in our entrepreneurial journey. We're 2 to 3 years in the journey where these women have decades worth of experience in it. So I feel like my missteps have been plenty, but I loved, Julia, that you made that distinction of doing things the right way and then perfectionism. And I just want to say my feeling on the perfectionism thing. It's not very fun. I think being your true authentic self is a lot more fun, and it's a greater thing to try and achieve than this perfectionism ideal that we have, because that might not be who you are, and who you are is the best gift to your business, to the team that you're going to build, and to the business you're going to build. So yeah, strive to be you, not this perfect ideal. And I want to think on what big misstep I made before I share it. So Jack, if you have one, why don't you jump in and share?
There's also I just want to add one more piece, because I have a feeling this question came up because it's something that plagues young women right now, is this idea of perfectionism. So let me just also say this. I run a publicly traded company that I built myself. I have to be on with investors every single day. Words that I say get recorded, they get played back. We have public securities issues, all the rest of this, right? I have 4 kids between 4 months and 10 years. My house is an absolute mess at all points in time. I'm wearing the suit above. I'm wearing pajama pants and slippers underneath this, guys. I am, for real. Okay. So you cannot do everything. You have to choose where you're going to focus with your time and energy, and what's important to get right, and what are the things you can leave behind. Because none of my investors care that my house is messy. They really don't. And my kids are alive and they're pretty healthy. I mean,
and your kids don't care either. I'm a mom of 5 boys. I feel you. Mine are older though. My youngest is 15, my oldest is 32, but I've been there, and it's so true. And that whole being authentic even fits into that of, you know what, my house is a mess. Come on in. Like, it's okay.
Yeah, Marie Kondo was just quoted the other day. It was my favorite thing of the week. She's the one who, things don't give you joy, throw them out and speak to them, or whatever it is. And she said, okay, now that I've had 3 kids, I'm kind of over that and I'm moving on.
Yes.
I'm a Virgo, so my horoscope tells me I'm supposed to be a perfectionist. So I definitely struggle with that. I'm also a mom to a baby. And so having a startup business, having a family at home, trying to strive for perfection is just not going to happen. And the messy stuff is where you do learn the best. And so Mary put me on the spot to think of something of a mistake we've made, because like she's saying, we are very early in our entrepreneurial journey. And I'd say, I can't say something specific, but I do know that something that I've failed at, or maybe a mistake I've made, is we've developed processes. And when you build a company, you're creating all these procedures and processes you want to follow. And it's anytime that we've come up with the process and then not stuck to it is when those mistakes happen. And those are the worst mistakes you can make, because we defined something that we wanted to do that we knew would make us perfect, at least in our own right. And that's the worst mistake, is when you've created a process for yourself and then you just don't listen to yourself. So that's one thing I could say is, when you're in your journey as starting a business, if you do create your own processes, stick to them, because trust yourself that you've done the right thing on the first time around. And if you listen to it and don't make that mistake of doubting yourself, then you'll just you will reach perfectionism in your own way.
That's it. I mean, I think it's more in our own voices that we hear those words rather than even outside, that we have to kind of quiet down sometimes. And there's a book I talk about all the time called The Growth Mindset. And I'm sure many of you have probably heard of it. It was a little bit of an older book. I found out, matter of fact, my 15-year-old is a freshman in high school, and they're reading it in school, which I think is phenomenal. But the concept around the growth mindset is, it's more around not being afraid to fail, and really taking the risks. And they talk about, the valedictorians are used to being valedictorians and top of their class, that they're kind of afraid to take a leap into something, because what if I'm not the top of my class in that? But the message in the book is you got to take the leap and try it anyway, and not be afraid, and of course learn from the failures. And I think you're right, the crucible times in our life are where we learn the most.
Yeah. Well, and so getting into agriculture, an industry that I did not foresee myself getting into, I did not have experience in it. I wanted to rely on experts in the field and, follow certain thought processes and ways of doing things in traditional agriculture settings. Even though I wanted to shake up that industry, I was still trying to follow certain things which I almost see as a little bit of a fault on my behalf. It goes back to what Jacqueline's saying, is like trusting yourself and also being authentic. Like, you're getting into your space, own it. And yes, listen to the people that have come before you, but also don't be afraid to charter your own path in it as well.
Right. And I think, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I need the quiet. Like, I need a quiet moment to hear my own voice, just like you're saying. And, definitely I take input and advice from others, but sometimes you got to find that quiet, and either whatever your way is, it writing, drawing, but find your own path and really know where you want to go. So, I think we can only do one more question, right, Sarah? Because you'd probably like to get us to the girls. So let's do just one more, which is hard to pick the best one. But I think I'm going to go with this one. So kind of what I was saying, if she can't see it, she can't be it. And I would love to know in your lives, who have been the role models that have helped you believe in yourself and made you go, you know what, I can do that. I can reach for the stars. I can be a CEO and founder and an owner.
Well, I'll jump in, and not to be too corny, but really it's my sister and my fellow co-founders.
Are you kidding me?
That's so cute. Oh,
But it's very true. Like, I moved to Austin away from my family for about 8-9 years. And I kind of like accidentally moved back to Chicago. The company I was working for at the time was having me travel back and forth. And whenever I'd come back to Chicago, I would have to host these big events. And every event that I had to have Jacqueline with me. And it was before we even considered starting a business together, but she was already my co-founder and bringing this company that I was working for to Chicago. And I think, the more we spent time together, and when we had this idea kind of come to life between us, she was someone that I kept looking at, like, can I do it? Can we do it?
Yeah.
And we just were that for each other. So
I always say
thanks,
that.
Jack.
That's so cute.
That is hilarious, because Mary and I have never been asked this question before. And the first person that I thought of was you, Mary, as well. Because I think we've been through a lot. It's been a huge challenge. And we both come from male dominant backgrounds and careers. Like, my background is construction. So lots of male dominated industry there. And yes, there were other women I looked up to in those careers, but on this entrepreneurial journey, I think I've found the most strength, and you have to be brave. And I think I'm so fortunate to be working with my sister, and she's very tenacious. So I definitely admire that about her.
And I'm sure you guys complement each other. There's there's so many personality things. We do a lot of that kind of stuff at Edlong. We love it. We eat it up. But there's one recently, 6 Geniuses, and you kind of find who compliments you. Like, I am not the detail person. I love dreaming and vision, and I can come up with ideas, but then the execution I need some help with. So I bet you guys are like that to each other.
Yin and yang.
Yeah.
Yep.
You need
The hunter and the gatherer.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love that. How about you guys? Julia and Teresa.
Teresa, why don't you go ahead?
Oh, okay. Well, I feel like in different parts of my life, I've had different people that have like guided me. So when I decided to leave the finance world, my mom is very kind of the tiger mom. And she was kind of like, we just spent so much money on you going to University of Chicago, and now you want to open a restaurant. And so I, not that I didn't have the most supporting family, but it just is a little bit different in my, family. Whereas my dad, who was like a computer science, then went to do Eastern medicine. My mom was like, okay, this free spirited is from that side of the family. But I remember just like, telling my best friend at the time, I was like, I'm just having this really kind of pivotal moment, like trying to figure out, like, I thought my vision growing out of college was I'm going to go to investment banking, do that for 2 years, do private equity for 2 years, go to business school, climb that corporate ladder. And that just didn't happen. And so
I would love you to share, and I know Sarah's going to be yelling at me in a minute here, but I loved learning about you and like that moment of when you decided, like, that was a good story.
Well, so the sifting the powdered sugar was part of that moment. But the moment was that I had been in, finance and in this role for a couple years now, and I was supposed to get promoted, and I was passed up from my promotion along with other females. And again, I was in a very male dominated industry as well. And, I was in New York at the time visiting a friend, and that just was like, you know what, I think I just need to take a break. And I had another friend that was going to business school the year before, and she went to Le Cordon for culinary in between. And I was like, you know what, don't they have a baking school? Julia Childs, I knew they had baking. So I was like, why don't I just like take a breather, take a couple of months off. I was in my late 20s. I had no family or kids or anything like that. So I was like, I'll do it for a couple months. I told my mom.
Emily in Paris. You're Emily.
Yes.
In Paris. I love
I
that.
told my mom, I gave my mom a timeline. I said, I'd do this for a whole year. I'll give myself a year. And then if I don't go back to finance or start a bakery, I will go back to finance, And I remember that whole year, my mom was like, where are we on this bakery? Where are you going
6
back
months,
to
9 months, where are we at? Yeah.
I know. And I was like, Mom, I'm not even asking you for money. Like I'm living on my own, And so, I opened Sugar Bliss, and still, even that 2 months into Sugar Bliss, my mom was still skeptical, she's like, oh, she just, spent so much money building out this bakery, whatever. And then 3 months in, I got invited by President Obama.
Yes, I read that.
So I got invited to, he was signing an executive order to form the women's business or women's council and girls to have more cabinet or more women part of his cabinet. And so I got invited.
That is amazing.
Which was amazing because I'm just the small business owner opening a bakery, and I'll keep it short, but long story. I was invited to sit on the front row. And so to my left, I was sitting next to Hillary Clinton's advisor, and to my right was Valerie Jarrett's mom. And I literally was like 10 feet from President Obama and all his cabinet members.
Oh my God, that is so awesome. Wow.
So I got all these pictures and whatever. And I think that was a turning moment for my mom, because
she's like, oh, now you've arrived.
So a couple months later, she was on a plane, and she got Sugar Bliss cupcakes, and she was giving it out to people on the plane. And this guy called, and he goes, I just want you to know that your mom is very proud of you. And I was like, thank you. Finally got the, so, but anyways, I don't know if I answered the question, but that was kind of,
I wanted to know if did you ever confront that particular boss, or did you just, did you silently leave, or did you ever say, you lost a really good person here because of this? Did you bring it out into the light, or did you just kind of move on?
I did fight a little bit because they didn't want to give me my bonus. So I did
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just ended up walking away. I later found out it was like the head honcho of research. So I just walked away. Sometimes it's just better just to walk away. But I found out later in life, like he ended up not doing well. And so I think that was just kind of karma. So,
Karma.
but I mean, I just focused on myself. So yeah.
Right. But I'm sure you're not alone in that story at all. And you were brave. Okay, Julia, what do you got?
Okay, well, a lot of entrepreneurs are like lemmings. You see a cliff, you walk towards it and you jump off, and you can't do anything but that, right? Being an entrepreneur, starting a business, growing, it's the hardest thing there is in terms, as far as I know, in terms of a lifestyle and running a business. Your life is your business is your life, especially until it gets to a certain stage, if you don't do it, it won't happen. It's not like a company where you show up for work, and if you decide not to show up, it's still going to be a company. It's not the same. There are people who are hardwired to do this, and I'm one of them. So, when I was, my first business, when I was 13 years old, I just moved from Switzerland to Oklahoma, not the same thing, and saw that kids were, gum and candy were legal at school. And yet there were kids on the school bus, who were selling Charms Blow Pops to each other, right? The lollipops that have gum in the middle. And so I got my dad to take me to Sam's, bought them wholesale, undersold the market, put everybody else out of business, and quit a day before I got caught.
That's hysterical.
And then when I was in high school, I ran the newspaper and the yearbook. And I thought that was because I liked journalism. And then eventually I figured out, no, it's because I like running things, building things, and taking things to the next level. So there are people like building things, and there are people like doing other things. But people like building things will continue to do that, no matter what the path, no matter how hard, and no matter how many times you fall off that cliff, right? So I've just kept doing it. I started a company a couple of years out of college that was in the .com space, and got a bunch of financing, got about $3 million committed in about 4 months, and all of a sudden the NASDAQ crashed, and there went all the financing. And I did it in Chicago because that's where I happened to be, and there was no tech economy there. I mean, it was just the beginnings. There was no 1871 or the things that are now in the city. People like JB were venture capitalists, who were hanging out playing poker, with us back then. And a lot of that stuff had to come to fruition. So I went to Kellogg because I didn't know what else to do. And I got a quick 1-year MBA and, came back and went to United and found a way to start another company. And I did it again and did it again and did it again and did it again. So there are some people who just really like building things, and it's really, really hard. And if you're one of those people, you're going to always love what you do. You're never going to feel unfulfilled by what's going on in the world, or figuring out that you're missing an opportunity, like, why am I in this day job? I could be going out there building my dream thing. You're never going to be that person. But at the same time, you might never get a honeymoon. My husband and I have been married 11 years. We've never taken the time to do it. Now we have 4 kids. Hard to go without them, right?
No.
There are trade-offs.
Do the 4-month-old, but leave the rest of them.
They're actually really good at taking care of the 4-month-olds. So maybe I just flip them the keys and iPad.
They'll be fine.
Yeah.
And
but
I loved what you had said
it is
about
what it is. Yeah.
Because you do have such a varied past, which is really interesting. But I think you said something about why you like the food industry because it moves the needle and has impact. I think is what you said, something along those lines, which I think is very true. The food industry is there's food heroes, whether it's indulgent in a cupcake, because that matters just as much as our nutrition, and we need both sides of that equation. And I love this industry. I would highly recommend it to any of these young women who we are now going to let ask some questions. Yay. So this will be fun. And I hope I don't screw up anyone's name. We're going to start with Kendall, and she's got a question ready for us. Go ahead, Kendall.
Hi, my name is Kendall Llewellyn. I'm in 6th grade and I go to Hawthorne Scholastic Academy. My business is called a Family Report Card Game, and it's basically like a board game that's used for families to talk about important topics. And during that board game, while they're talking and discussing about the important topics, they're basically giving each other grades. and it's kind of similar to a school report card. So my question is, what makes your business different from your competitors? And also, like, what qualities do you think an entrepreneur should possess? Like, if they're trying to become one, or like what they should start off with?
So I have a number one answer to the quality. Got one primary answer, one secondary answer. Number one is tenacity. The only thing that you can, ever do wrong really is stop. Tenacity is you keep going, you keep going, you keep going, you keep going, you figure it out. Nothing gets in your way. You hit a roadblock, you go over it, you go around it, you find a way. Tenacity, it's starting and never stopping. That's the most important quality of an entrepreneur. If you stop, it's done. But if you keep going, you can figure it out. The second most important thing is sales. And sales is what you will be doing all day long, every day. You're doing it right now. You're doing it when you tell your family about your idea. You're doing it when you pitch an employee, when you pitch an investor, when you talk to a vendor, when you talk to a retailer, whatever it might be. You are always, always, always selling. And what you need for great selling is communication. So your communication skills will be one of the most important things you ever develop to drive your company forward. And communication is verbal. It's being able to talk to large groups, being able to talk one-on-one, being able to communicate your idea. It's written. It's how you encapsulate your ideas in an email, in a presentation, how you write your business plan. It's every step of the communication process. So being able to write really well and compose those ideas and put together those presentations and communicate your points is an area that you should spend a lot of time and energy focusing on, because if you can't communicate, then you can't bring people in to help you to bring that idea to life.
It's very good. I love Sarah. Thank you. She threw the clock up there for us. So we have about 3 more minutes just to answer Kendall's questions. If anyone else wants to chime in, feel free.
Julia, I loved the tenacity quality. It's hands down the one quality that I would, say for sure an entrepreneur would need. I think, my friends, our close circle is always like, how are you doing this? Sometimes I just say, I don't know, but we're not stopping. That's like one way we are going to make Freight to Plate get out there. It's the nonstop. You wake up, you do it. Sometimes you go to sleep still doing it and thinking about it, and you dream about it, and you wake up and you keep going. And then your second question for what makes Freight to Plate different, what's our differentiator for our competitors in the market? Again, we're urban agriculture, we're controlled environment agriculture service, and it's a new part of the industry that's coming into the market. And I think a lot of our competitors are communicating it in a very high tech, almost Silicon Valley way. So again, to Julia's point, how we communicate is really important. How Freight to Plate, how we communicate, we keep it family focused, community focused, people focused. And we use those words, and we are soft in our communication. And that's how we drive our differentiator, because to us, food is personal. Our family is in our business, and we are about connecting food and people. So I think you won't find another ag tech startup that is as soft and speaks the way that Freight to Plate does.
I was just going to add, I definitely agree with Julia about sales. My staff is asking me to stop selling any more Valentine's Day stuff because we're like at capacity. But selling is a number one thing. You're constantly selling your business, like talking about it, getting people interested in it. I'm constantly
promoting and the whole
exactly
social media, depending on what you're doing. Yeah.
And then also being adaptive, like as when COVID hit, we were in the downtown area. I had to lay off my entire staff, and nobody is coming downtown for getting sweets, and so we had to pivot and start shipping and stuff. And we've adapted a lot with our customers, like do more gluten-free, vegan options, stuff like that. So you have to really listen to your customers to see like what they're looking for. The same thing with cake pops, like it was something that a customer was like, hey, can you do this? And I was like, well, we have all the ingredients. Yes, we can do it. And so, you know, for Valentine's, we have thousands of cake pops that we're making. And this is over like the last 10 years. So we get creative with all our customers too. What differentiates us from our competitors? I mean, again, you know, I didn't invent the cupcake. I mean, I definitely think our cupcakes are better than our competitors on taste and, you know, and design. But, you know, customer service and food and quality is really important. And so, you know, we have, like, I just had a phone call today from a customer that said that they had ordered cake pops from a competitor of ours and they couldn't use them. And they asked us if we could like do 5 dozen custom cake pops. And we did that. And she called us to thank us. And, you know, that stuff, we try to make it easy on our customers, do what we can. And, you know, with our corporate companies, like we have a major law firm that has booked us every year for their holiday party. And it's a large law firm. And because we have good customer service, good quality products. So especially in the food industry, it's super important, those two things.
Totally. Okay, I think we're gonna, Jacqueline, you get to get this first question from Zoya. And I think she's up next. Thank you, Kendall. That was awesome. Did I say your name right? Oh, I think you might be on mute. So see if you, because we can't hear you. I can't hear. Can you guys hear? No. There you go. Perfect.
Okay, great. So I wanted to start off by saying, okay, so my name is Zoya, and I wanted to start off by saying that I think that you guys are very impressive, and it's very reassuring for me to see successful women, like, you know, prospering. So my company is Elixir, and my goal is to prevent the elderly from falling and having like fatal consequences. And I developed a product to stop this, and I did this by dividing my product into 2 parts. The first is the main body, and the second is the bracelet. The main body attaches itself easily onto any walker, and it communicates with the bracelet that the user wears to issue an alarm if the user walks too far away from the walker. So my question for you today is it possible for me to have a business that I'm really passionate about and I really wanted to like flourish while also having a demanding workload from school and other commitments? And is there like, do you guys have any tips for me to accomplish that?
So I think, yeah, Jacqueline, you go right ahead on this one.
That's a great question, and what an awesome business idea. It's a lot different than my area of expertise, but I think it's a great idea. And I'm also not in school, so I don't know the pressures of that. But what I do know is that I'm a new mom, so that's what I would compare it to, is that I have a heavy workload at home, you know, just running a household, raising a baby. And my answer is just simply 100% you can do it. It all comes down to, we talked about it earlier when we were talking about perfectionism is really, it's about being organized. It's about making decisions and not delaying. I think when you're running a business, there's so many decisions to make. And if not making a decision is the worst decision you can make, is just not taking action. So, trying to balance the load, you just have to know that sometimes everything's not going to be done perfectly, but I definitely think that as a student, that should be your priority. I think it's really important to finish school, especially at your level of education. So making that the priority, but knowing that time management and getting to do the things that you're passionate about will all fall in place, especially when what you're learning in school is only going to make this passion project that much more successful. So knowing that everything happens for a reason and that you get to make those choices to make it a successful business.
You know, when I was in college, I finished up and I had a business plan and I was ready to go and start it. And at the time where I went to school, they were just starting an entrepreneurship program. I'd taken one of the first classes and I had a mentor there who I went and I talked to and I said, look, you know, graduating college, I want to go start this business. And he's like, I don't know if I would yet. And I said, why not? You know, I'm excited. I'm ready. Let me go. And he said, well, if you go and work in, for corporations for a couple of years, it'll teach you how they think and how they act and how their purchasing process goes and how, it is to work within that company and how to sell to that company and all of the rest of it. And it will make you probably in the end a much better entrepreneur because you will know who you're working with. And so I took his advice and I went and I worked in at first advertising, which gave me perspective across multiple brands internally, working on their accounts. And then as business strategy consulting, which gave me perspective working inside them on multiple accounts. And then eventually, with United, I worked internally for a while. And that was enough. I learned the lessons that I needed to learn, and I learned how they work on the inside and how they think and, what the perspectives are and the rest. And at that point, I was ready to go and start my own business and to get the money for it and to focus in on it and to, know what I needed to do. And what I ended up doing as one of my first major businesses was a business that ended up selling back to those very, very large corporations. If I didn't understand them, I wouldn't be as good as what I'm doing. So with that, there isn't, the path isn't necessarily immediately to try to do everything at once. Timing is important. Focus is important. Being able to, realize your vision and see it through is important. If you spread yourself too thin across too many objectives, you're just going to always feel like you're failing. You're not doing enough at one, you're not doing enough at another. So timing is also really important. And, you want to make sure that you actually realize your dreams and go out and get that done. But putting too much pressure on yourself at the wrong point in time, you may not give you the best path to success. So it's a pretty individual answer. You can do it, but whether it's the best time for you to do it is another question.
Good. Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
I agree with it.
oh.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm the queen of lists, and I list out all the things that I need to do. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 pages long. Just write them all out, and then I try and prioritize and organize that list. And then just having something visual that I can check off and go through is always something that helps me when I have a really heavy workload.
That's so funny. I wrote down planning and visual. I have to write stuff, and I think it sounds really tactical, but use your calendar. And my CFO would say, and use different colors. So you need a purple pen, a pink pen, a black pen. And it sounds like crazy, but it helps tremendously. And it's like a stress reliever, I believe, too, because then you can look and see, should I be spending my time on that or not? Back to the prioritization.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say delegate to elevate, but you probably don't have many people to delegate to yet. So that might be a hard one.
Okay, thank you. That was very helpful.
Good. Teresa, did you want to say one thing, or how are you doing?
No, I was just saying, I get that question a lot with college students, and I'm like, I quit my job and then jumped into entrepreneurship. I mean, everyone's different. But as a, not in college, I think education is super important. And then also, for me, going and doing corporate finance for 6 years made me learn so much more so that I could be better at being an entrepreneur, like understanding financial statements or understanding different stocks I was covering. Like now they are our vendors, like Cisco is a food service company. And as a stock analyst, like I used to be able to go and get, as a vendor, I get to go to the warehouse, but as a stock analyst, it was kind of like, oh, we'll give you a little bit of treatment, So, but I mean, I learned so much, writing my business plan, and that's a lot doing with what I was in finance. So I definitely think I really enjoyed working for someone for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
There's one more other thing to point out about, about the whole entrepreneurship thing and your career and the rest. It's your network. Your network is critically important. And that's something that you can build in whatever that you're doing, but you will lean on this more than you ever anticipate as you start to build your company and grow and scale. So focusing on growing your network at any point in time, start now. Like every single one of you should have a LinkedIn profile, right? Start now, start reaching out to people, reach out to me, connect to P. I've got 17,000 people on my LinkedIn, I will connect to you, build your network now and get out in front of it. Because that's something else as a tool that will help you navigate and make these decisions and figure out what is the right time and the rest.
Very good. Okay, thank you, Zoya. I think we're going to move on to Maria is next with her question. Hi, Maria.
Hi, I'm Maria Tier. I'm in 8th grade and I go to Lincoln Middle School. And my business idea is I'm gonna be selling customized painted rocks to like family and friends who know kids in the hospital. So
Oh, I love that idea.
and then my question was there any discrimination against being like owned, like your business being owned by women?
There's a little,
I could
go ahead.
Actually, I've had many moments. One time I was getting my business loan for my first store, and I presented all the documents. I had a really good credit score, personal financial statements. I was investing 50% of what I was asking the bank. And long story short, I got flat out declined by 1 out of the 3 banks, which puzzled me. So I reached out to the woman and I said, why did I not get the loan? And she said, well, you're too young to open a business. And I said, this was back in 2005. And then I didn't have a secondary income, which means I'm not married. And I said, well, what if I had a stay-at-home husband? So long story short, I could have, filed something at the bank, but I asked her who was her boss. And so again, she wouldn't give it to me, but I was in equity research. And so I just found out and I called her boss and I said, look, I'm looking for a bank to help me open 1 Sugar Bliss or 1,000 Sugar Blisses. And so the very next day I got my business loan from there. However, I ended up going with one of the other banks that treated me right from the beginning. And so I remember feeling a little bit like distraught, even though I had 2 other banks, but I was just like, why is this happening in 2005? And then also with construction, I mean, I built 2 stores from ground up, like hollow stores. And again, a lot of times the construction work, our general contractor just was like, no, you probably don't know what you're doing. And we had gone through inspections and I was like, where's the floor drain in the kitchen? And he was like, oh, we passed inspection. And so long story short, I called the city of Chicago plumbing. They came out, they noticed there's no floor drains. And so I feel like sometimes, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I have to put my big boy pants on and just like go through architectural drawings or whatever, but it's frustrating, but I feel like it just makes me like plow through even more.
That's amazing. Yeah. Good question. You guys got some stories on that?
Yeah.
many.
Well, so again, not to sound like a broken record, but what we're doing with Freight to Plate is new. Bringing shipping containers that grow food, specifically in the city of Chicago, is like blowing people's minds, especially in the building department where, shipping containers are kind of a hard thing to get zoned and permitted. And many times Jacqueline and I have been told, you girls are very ambitious, but with a little, twang in the voice. So we've seen it a lot, and in a way that, people think that we have a mission that's too great for 2 women to accomplish. And we hear it directly to our faces, people saying no, people not wanting to move forward. But again, it's something that you just have to push through and use that tenacity that you have inside you, because if you're an entrepreneur, you want to do it, you have it inside you, just keep going and don't let no's stop you. Just make it bolster what you want to do. And
I think that's the importance of even EA, and like Julia, you were talking about networking. Surround yourself with men and women that support you, quite frankly, but having your circle that protects you from some of these frustrations and annoying.
And one small thing to add to what Mary was saying, that yes, we do face adversity all the time as women in our industry. And I faced it in my previous career as well. And the one thing I could say as advice to tackle that is just, you have to be an advocate for yourself. I just have learned that being a woman, you have to take things into your own hands and really ask for what you want, and sometimes don't take no for an answer. Maybe never take no for an answer. It's all about just advocating for yourself. And that's really the only way to fight off the stigma of being a woman within your industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I used to, when I graduated from college, I naively thought misogyny was dead and that I wouldn't, be regarded as a woman in business. I'd be regarded as a person in business. And then I ran into the wrong kind of man in many places in business. I was propositioned by a senior executive at an airline. I was discriminated against as a woman by investors I brought into my company because there are great male investors. There are great male supporters. My co-founders in this company are all white men. Our focus is on diversity because we all believe in that. The investors that I brought into this company early on all believed in me as an entrepreneur. And the fact that I was a woman either encouraged them to invest or it didn't stop them. I've also brought in investors who get really uncomfortable when there's a woman managing money and there's too much money at the table. And then they'd prefer their network, who they know and they trust and tends to look and act like them. There's a lot of that. One of the reasons that we are, an all women public board is because for us to make lasting and systemic change, it has to be about money. It's not about what's right to do. It's not about what we should do. It's about what'll be financially successful, because that is how real systemic change will happen. And when you rely on tokenism, like, well, we should have a woman on this board because it's the right thing to do, that woman ends up being alone and marginalized because she wasn't brought on for the right reasons. So our goal as a very publicly female company is to show that we'll succeed financially on the public markets. And if and when we do that, we'll have a much better case for having more women on boards and more women leading companies than if we just say, well, we should.
That's good. And Maria, when you're like crazy successful, you got to remember to reach back and help other young women. So, because you will be. Great question.
I was just going to add, because I've seen, over the last 15 years, how other people have helped my business, whether, succeed. When I developed the cookies for the retailers, we decided to have a social mission. And so one of them, we are women and minority owned, but we use 100% recyclable packaging. And a lot of cookie companies aren't using that yet. And then also we have a social mission that a portion of our proceeds go back to support women and minority entrepreneurs. So I'm hoping we get into a lot more retailers and we, create a foundation to help a lot of these businesses, that are, part of this panel, part of this conference. So, it's great. I love all these ideas.
Great. Okay, thanks, Maria. We're going to move on to Juliana. Hello, Juliana.
Hello, my name is Juliana Garcia. I'm the CEO of Oasis. It is a company that makes jewelry, and it's basically jewelry that has a fidget and uses lavender essential oil to help with anxiety and fidgeting and stuff like that, to have a safe way to cope with your feelings. So my question for you guys is, if you could go back and tell yourself something, like your younger self, what would you say?
Good question. Who wants to tackle that one first?
Well, I'll say I'm a customer. I would love a necklace like that. I am an avid essential oil user, so I love your business idea, and I will be a customer. And I think something I would love to go back and tell younger Mary Catherine is, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to, feel or look stupid. Just ask the question. Usually there's someone else around you that wants to ask the same exact question. Yeah, so that's what I would say to myself.
That's great. You guys got anything you want to add to that? I would say, I got one that came to me is, don't ever shrink to make somebody else feel good. Sometimes people get a little scared that you get a little too big for your britches, and they're not the right people. People you want around you are going to want you to be as big as you can be, and never to have to be too small. Always.
We're talking a lot about the individual and the entrepreneur, but the reality is to do anything beyond a certain scale, you need a team.
Mhm.
And one of the things you'll find yourself doing constantly in your career is figuring out who to trust. That's also one of the big things, right? You know, who's a good employee, who's a person that's the right investor, you know, whose advice should you listen
I
to?
think
It's
that's
not
a
all
great
good.
point. It's the foundation of everything. It's
Mhm.
huge point is who to trust.
Who to trust is absolutely essential. I've had terrible business partners that I trusted and I shouldn't, you know. You can make fundamental, you know, mistakes at an early stage, and those take a lot of time, energy, and things to unravel. I've
And
seen
maybe it's
businesses.
even trusting your gut. I mean, that's probably a learned skill, quite frankly, you know, but as you get better and better at it, I mean, I think about years ago, it might take me a year or two to let somebody go. Now it's like, I know that gut feels so much faster, you know?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, you know, what is gut? You know, it's not an organ. You know, it's the combination of 1,000 little tiny pieces of data and input that are guiding you towards a feeling, and it's based on your experiences. That's what's feeding this spidey sense. And as you learn and as you have more experiences, you know, that'll all add up. So when you say listen to your gut, it's not because there's something mystical going on. It's because you know, based on all of these things that have happened and that you've learned throughout your life, what that's telling you. So who to trust as an employee, who to trust to finance your business, you know, who to trust to scale your businesses. I've seen perfectly great businesses fail because they took the wrong money from the wrong person. You know, I've seen, you know, perfectly mediocre products do really, really, really well because they executed like crazy on them. So, you know, how you execute is really the name of the game. It's not the idea. It's how you take that idea to the next level and what you do with it.
So true. Jacqueline or Teresa, you have any comments on what you would tell your young self?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Juliana, I love your business idea as well. And something I would tell my younger self, because I think something we all have in common, the CEOs on this panel, is that we all have pivoted in our careers. And I think that's a very important lesson, especially if you're going to start your own business, is what I would tell my younger self is stay focused on the present and work really hard. And then trust that if you're pivoting, you're moving into something new, but with so much knowledge behind you that's going to make you successful. So don't be afraid of pivoting. It's so important. And you're going to take all the lessons you've learned, you're going to take the network that you've gathered along the way, and you're going to be successful. So I think you're in a great spot that you're already coming up with the business idea at such a young age, because this is just the beginning for you. So I'm really excited for you.
And one that's so needed. I think that's awesome.
I mean, I would say, you know, it's important education. I mean, my grandfather was always like education, education. So, I mean, get the education you need, get the work experience. But also ultimately it's your life. And so do what makes you happy or what makes you passionate. You know, I've been doing Sugar Bliss for 15, 16 years, and it's like gone by so fast because I don't feel like it's a job. I feel like I'm creating something, you know, growing my business. So again, you have a limited amount of time on earth, and I feel like, you know, time flies, and, you know, do what makes you happy.
You didn't want that Sunday dread, that's for sure. That's not a good thing. Great question, Juliana. Okay, I think
Thank you.
thank you so much. We're moving on to Morgan.
Hi.
Hi, Morgan.
So before I start, I'd like to thank you guys for taking time out of your day to be on this panel. I personally found it very insightful with my business ideas. So I just want to thank you guys for that.
You're welcome.
So my name is Morgan, and my business is called Creative Coverage, which is a boutique apparel company that specializes in empowering teens and young adults through creative shirts and positive messages. In addition to that, 25% of all proceeds are being donated to various foster care organizations around Chicago to promote awareness and giving back to your community. So, because all of you guys are in food businesses, I was wondering how the supply shortage after COVID affected your businesses.
Great
So
question.
that is a good question, because it certainly caused a lot of disruption. Let me also just make one point about your business. First of all, absolutely great idea. And I love that you're supporting the foster care system. Make sure that you position it as a percentage of profits, not a percentage of proceeds, because you need to make sure that you can cover your full margins and you're taking it out of the profitability at the end of the day for the company, rather than just coming off the top. So in terms of the food supply chain, you know, there's always these crazy disruptions that ripple through the system that can hit things at different points in time that you wouldn't necessarily think of unless you're in the middle of it. I'll give you an example. Right now, food distributors, the people that actually ship the food the last mile to like a restaurant or things, they've got a real problem with overcrowding at the warehouses. Here's why, though. It's because they want to carry 1 or 2 brands of a certain commodity, right? So let's call it I call it the 30 types of bacon problem, because this is how a friend of mine who owns a huge distributor characterizes it. She wants to be able to carry 2 kinds of bacon, a primary bacon and a secondary bacon for when that other bacon, you know, isn't available. She has to carry 30 kinds of bacon right now, because the supply chain is so erratic that in order to meet the demand by the restaurants that are carrying her food for, you know, bacon, she has to have 30 different suppliers. That means that there are 30 slots at her warehouse that are filled with bacon, as opposed to just 2. So it's causing issues for other companies that want to come in to her warehouse and to get started with them, because there isn't enough room because of the supply chain issues. So in addition to things that you think of, like, you know, shortages and driving costs and the rest, there are all of these weird little esoteric things that ripple through the market, because, you know, that's the reality of it. In our particular business, we saw this stuff start to happen during COVID. That's where the markets really started to get disrupted. And it was also in crazy ways. For instance, you know, people were, you know, buying all the food, and therefore all the distributors were shipping all the food. Well, they focused on the major brands, because the major brands were supplying the most pressure, both from the perspective of the retailers as well as those brands. So what happened is the small brands couldn't get on the trucks. So even though grocery stores were selling out and selling out and selling out, we couldn't get our food to the store because the distributors wouldn't put it on the trucks, because they were focused on the big brands and that demand. So there's always kind of weird stuff that happens that aren't the things that you would think of in the middle. What we ended up doing is we saw some of these things happen during COVID, and we saw where the bottlenecks would be. And then we kind of retooled our products to take those out of the supply chain so that they wouldn't become bigger problems. And in some cases, that meant that we had to relaunch a product from scratch, and it was really expensive. But we knew if there were issues in the supply chain, we couldn't scale, because we'd be sitting there waiting to produce a product until one ingredient showed up and it just wasn't available. So we did things like take our Mosaics chips, which initially were organic. We saw big issues with the organic supply chain. We retooled them as non-GMO, which is a step below organic. But we also added sustainable packaging film, so that packaging film will degrade in any waste stream without special handling. So we kind of made them better while retooling them to ensure that we could get through the supply chain. You get creative.
You get very creative and agile. I feel like that was a big thing with us. And, you know, in the flavor, I mean, it's weird. You'd go to the gas stations and weird things like Dr. Pepper wouldn't be there, you know, just the things that you just think of as staples. But in our industry, I think having the agility to overstock on inventory when we saw it coming, and then that was not me, that was my brilliant operations and supply chain team, and that they even knew intuitively what to overstock on, I was in awe of. So many of the flavor companies were like 50%, 60% shipping on times, and we stayed at like 95, which I was so proud of our team. But it was
agility. Yeah, Laurette, what you
Agility.
mentioned, agility is really important, being able to act fast. Yeah, when Ukraine was invaded, you know, we're like, oh, okay, you know, they're the major supplier of sunflower oil,
Yes,
but we don't buy from Ukraine, so we're okay. No, we were okay for about 5 minutes until everybody who did buy from the Ukraine came after our supply.
exactly.
So
And
we
it
ended
seemed
up
like the biggest, most powerful companies were getting the supplies. So some of us were like, you know, and again, it goes down to networking too. Like you talked about, Julia. I mean, I feel like my supply chain team had amazing networks within the food industry to, you know, can I get a little from you, a little from there? It was crazy though. It was crazy. We've been through a lot.
Sometimes they become happy accidents, right? So
Right.
we ended up retooling sunflower lecithin out of one of our product, and turns out the product we used to replace it actually performed a lot better, was cheaper, and tasted better. Woo!
Exactly. Exactly. I think that's great. Do you guys have any burning thoughts on that? I'm having a really hard time sticking to the 5 minutes, Sarah. Trying. So if not, I think we better move on. So everyone gets a chance to speak. So thank you, Morgan. Great question. Michaela. Hi, Michaela. I think you're still on mute. There you go.
We go. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep, you sound good.
All right. Well, my name is Michaela Clark, and I am a junior at Indiana Agriculture and Technology. And my business is a subscription service that sells international snacks. And then a percentage of profits goes to charities and nonprofits that help hungry people, like Feeding America. And then my question was, in the food industry and selling food, especially when you have something new, it can either bring people in or push them away. So like, what was your hook? How did you get people to buy what you have?
Great question. Okay, who hasn't spoken in a while? Jacqueline or Teresa? I think you guys are.
I can go first. So again, I didn't develop the idea of a cupcake, but I knew that I wanted to elevate the cupcake and also target a clientele that was not just like the everyday walking customer. And so our bakery is in downtown Chicago. And so my main focus was to do corporate clients. So I wanted not to have like kind of the traditional like swirl with a bunch of sprinkles. So we have, as you can see, we have kind of a signature design that is trademarked. It has like 8 petals on the bottom and then 5 on top, but that's the Sugar Bliss blossom. So when someone opens a box of cupcakes, they know that that's Sugar Bliss. So it was really important to have like a signature design on our cupcakes. And then, with our launch into Walgreens, we did a lot of research on looking at other competitors out there, what their packaging looked like, what colors and stuff like that. And, we were like, oh, red is, Chips Ahoy, blue is Oreos. And so we we're looking at a bunch of I can probably share my Zoom screen at some point of the packaging, but we wanted to do something vibrant so that people would grab it. And so we came up with this ombre look for each of our packaging. So, consumers are always, when you go into a store, your eyes are, you eat with your eyes, right? And so that was the same thing with packaging, was very important to us.
So true. Branding, marketing.
Yeah, something interesting that we've done at Freight to Plate. Mary and I actually own and operate our own farm, so we grow everything. Oh, I see the packaging.
Wow, that's great. Cool.
I love it. So something about what we're doing at Freight to Plate, not necessarily packaging, but the product itself. So we're growing leafy greens and lettuces and herbs. So things that you will find at the grocery store. Back to that supply chain question, during the pandemic, we saw a lot of those things not at the grocery store. They just don't look good. So at Freight to Plate, we bring a farm into your community and grow right there. So you're getting very fresh food and the best and the most high quality product. And so some of our customers are chefs, and not just any old chef. We're talking Michelin starred chefs, so some of the best chefs in the world buy our product. And you might think, like, what's so special about our lettuce or our arugula? But something we came up with was, we call it precision harvesting, where we harvest the food, basically trim off the leaves, and we do it in a manner that when the chefs buy our our lettuce, yes, it is just old lettuce, but the way we've harvested it, it's precision cut so that the chefs right away can plate it and they can create art on their plate of food. And it's not just any old piece of lettuce anymore. It's something that is already perfectly prepared for them to give to their the people at their restaurant, and it's less time for their kitchen staff. So we're eliminating a lot of the process within their kitchen. It saves them time and money, and they're getting a higher quality and prettier product. So that's just another way we've differentiated ourselves as just not any normal farmer, but a farmer that is boutique, so to speak.
That's good. Anyone else want to chime in? I think I would say for us, we're a secret ingredient, which is kind of fun. So flavors, you know, if you think of Pepsi and Coke in the world, Coke would never ever reveal who their flavor company is, and Pepsi would never reveal. And even the guy that knows the formula, there's like one guy that knows each of the, there's like bodyguards, and it's kind of cool. Not that we're in Pepsi or Coke, I didn't mean to mislead. I wish. But I think with us, it's solving problems. To differentiate us, we're experts in dairy and non-dairy taste. And with the flexitarian, Julia, I think you were talking about how that's like grown so much. I think it was you or maybe it was Teresa, but
that was me. I say flexitarian a lot.
Yeah. And so that's been we flavor stuff from real dairy stuff to non-dairy dairy, which is really confusing. But I think the competitive advantage is when other flavor companies that maybe aren't focused in such a focused way as we are, and they're more like they go strawberry flavors to meat flavors, but our focus is the expertise that helps us solve these problems that other people can't. So I think that gives us a competitive advantage. And just, you know, it's really all about solving problems or solving a need in the market.
Well, speaking of solving that need, Michaela, I think that's what you're doing is you're offering people discovery. You know, it's about wanting to discover new things, right? And so you're not trying to get people to, for instance, try sesame milk, love sesame milk, and keep buying sesame milk. You're offering them the opportunity to discover completely new things they may never have tried before, in terms of the international snacks.
I think that's really a great concept, because I've traveled internationally and probably didn't even travel internationally as I was in my 30s, and the different food is huge. And I'd be like, why don't we have this in the States? This is amazing. Like dill pickled chips, which we do now have, thank God. But those are phenomenal. They were over in the UK 20 years ago. So I think it's a great model. I like where you're going, and it does give people choices, like Julia's saying, that they didn't even know were there. So great question, lady. Okay, we are moving on to Izzy.
I'm Izzy. I'm
Hi,
I'm
Izzy.
6th grade, and I go to Alcott Elementary, and my business is called Community Book Chicago, and it's a business that hosts live events for people that go to low-income schools, specifically middle schoolers. And diverse authors will be speaking at these events to open up and let everyone experience reading and their book. So my question is, how did you come up with the logos for your business?
All right, branding. That is a whole ball of wax. So first of all, it's very important. And it is not easy to do. And like anything else, it's a lot of art more than it is science, but there is some science behind it as well. So when you're looking at developing logos and things, there are a lot of ways to go about it, but there are certain things that you have to be able to do. You have to be able to show it big and small. It has to be able to function as a hallmark as well as with words. You know, there's adaptability things, colors, all sorts of pieces to think through, because this is something you want to reproduce on all sorts of things. You know, you could put it on a t-shirt, you could put it on your product, you put it here, you can put it there. You also want it to be unique, distinctive, and stand for, you know, who and what you are. You know, back in the early 2000s, when all these .com companies were rushing, you know, to market, and there are all these new companies being created overnight, we actually put together a web page, a bunch of other, you know, internet entrepreneurs and myself, of all of the blue swoosh logos, because every other freaking company had a blue swoosh logo. I don't know why, it just was what it was for a period of time. So really finding something that is emblematic of your own identity and can showcase and can stand for you is important. It's a process. One thing we did when we were developing our corporate logo is we actually decided to do kind of a design contest. We went to one of those groups like 99 Designs, and we said, okay, we'll throw $100 at it and see if anything comes up. And we got some bizarre logos, man. We got some stuff like we said, okay, it's planting hope. We don't want any images of leaves or other things. So some guy gave us a gnome, and we're like, a gnome. We're like, we said this is a woman-run company, and it's like, how do you know if it's a male or female gnome? And I'm like, oh, I suppose I don't know if it's a male or female gnome. It has a beard. Now we're going in a whole different direction. No gnomes, no people. But through that process, we actually found a brilliant, a designer out of Italy who created something absolutely fantastic for us. And after going through literally 99 non-designs, we ended up with one that was great. And we ended up working with that designer and going further and the rest. We did the same thing when we were redesigning our packaging. We went out and we gave, we picked, 15 artists around the world and gave them each, $500 to create a concept and to see if that helped to spur any ideas internally. And sure enough, one of them did, and it ended up being, some brilliant artists who were based in a small town in North Carolina. We're also tattoo artists. You never know what you're going to find or where that inspiration is going to come from. Sometimes we've developed them internally with our own designers, but it's a process, and it's an important one, because once you do that, it's going to have a lot of meaning in terms of how you're hanging your business and your products on it. So it's worth spending some time on.
Yeah.
I remember when I was trying to think of the name for my bakery, and I, came up with like Sweet Bliss, and I came up with Sweet Bliss, and then I looked at the USPTO, which is the patent trademark, which I advise if you ever establish your business to make sure it's not taken. And I was like, oh, that's taken. I was like, and I kept going through so many different names, and at one point I was like, you know what? I just give up. It's just going to call Teresa's Bakery. I was like, no, we have to like find another name. And so I like the word bliss. So I just kept coming up, and I came up with Sugar Bliss. And, I was like, well, it's sugar, that's like kind of a bad connotation, but I was like, who are we kidding here? We're doing cupcakes and sweets,
right.
So it's very, and like, it's so funny because now like everyone tries to take our name, and we have to constantly send cease and desist letters because it's trademarked to people that get the name Sugar Bliss either on Facebook or Instagram and stuff like that. But it's really, I didn't know if I was going to have my business for 1 year, 2 years, 15 years, and I have to live with this name. So it's really important to find a name that you like.
It's almost like it when you see it though too, right? I think so true of going through iterations and iterations, and then you're gonna be like, that's it. And catchy, and it's hard though. That's a great question.
Well, I think the ladies shared a lot of great insight, and something that we really tried to focus on at Freight to Plate was that timeless stamp, something that could live on for years as our company evolves. Our logo is essentially a stamp that it could mean Freight to Plate, but it can also grow with us as well. It's almost agnostic. Our name Freight to Plate is super literal.
It's so descriptive.
Yes, Freight to Plate. We grow in a freight, and it goes directly to your
plate. It's like
plate.
What don't you get about this?
Exactly. So with our logo, our stamp, we wanted something that could be interpreted many different ways. We didn't want something like a lot of our competitors in the market use a leaf with a raindrop, because we are growing hydroponically. We wanted to stay as far away from that as possible. So sticking with a logo that, to Julia's point, that you can make really big, it could be really small, it could stand alone, it doesn't have to be with your name, and something that's timeless is really important. And again, you're going to see a million logos as you go through that process, and one will stand out, one will tug at your heart, and that's when to go with that one.
It's kind of hard when you run a legacy family business, because I had no say whatsoever, and I had to say in our logo, but I didn't
always rebrand.
Yeah, we did rebrand the logo, but the name is over 110 years old. I think we're getting on that, but it was truly named after a man named Edward Long. And when you're that old, it's such a manly name on top of it. Like So it's hard stuff, but but then you have the reputation. I think it would, we've talked about it, believe me, but I think it not worth the risk to, lose our history there, but yes, I did play with the logo. It used to be a chemical, kind of like a carbon atom, because, science is really a big part of what we do. And so we made it way more feminine by having a swirl, but even that, it's hard. It took us you got to sit and stare at it for like 6 months before you make the leap. It's big. So great question. Okay. After Izzy, we have Kennedy. Hi, Kennedy. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well.
Good.
So my name is Kennedy Fennessy, and my business name is Arcadian Room Design. My service provides 3D room designs for kids and teens in Oak Park, and my mission is to help kids and teens feel confident in their rooms.
I like that.
So my question for you guys is, how are you inclusive with your food products?
So what do you mean by that? And I'm trying to describe it a little more inclusive with our food products.
But like, how do you reach out to other groups with your product? Groups of people.
That's a good question. First, Kennedy, I love your business idea. My degree in college was interior architecture, so my background is interior design before I went into a whole bunch of other things. But so I love your idea. Something we do at Freight to Plate is, and it's super important to us, is that yes, we're growing food, but we love to partner up with other businesses that have maybe similar ethos. But when you partner with someone that's not exactly in your industry and do a collaboration, so for instance, we'll grow specific types of lettuces and herbs and then package it and co-brand it with someone that we're partnering with, and maybe they're a health and wellness company, maybe they're not just a restaurant, but maybe they're a gym or someone that's a different walk of life. But when we co-brand and we grow together, we're able to reach out to other audiences. So we get in front of a different audience that we normally wouldn't have if we had just stuck to our own growing and doing our own selection of what we want to grow. But when we partner with other groups, that's how you actually you grow your sales that way. So it's a really good thing. And as a business owner, I recommend partnering with people that are not in your same line of business or in your same industry, because those mismatched partnerships make a even cooler result than you would ever imagine. And that's something that Mary is actually the gatherer. That's a big part of what she does at Freight to Plate.
I'm a mad scientist when it comes to partnerships. I love it.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Collaboration, getting experts together.
Thank you. We're constantly collaborating with lots of different organizations, whether it's food. Like during COVID, we partnered with a catering company. And so we provided the cupcakes, they provided lunches for frontline workers. And so our customers were able to spend money and then also us delivering to the frontline workers. But we also do like fun stuff. I mean, we've done stuff with like Top Chef Desserts. We collaborated with them back in the day. We do stuff with gyms. We did something this summer called Sip, Sweet, Sweat. So obviously we provide the sweets and then you go to the gym. So it was a power plate class, but it was fun. I mean, we that is to grow, like we did a lot of social media with that. So to grow your, followers, people, I mean, even to this day, which 16 years, but Chicago is so huge. There are some people that I've never heard of Sugar Bliss, where, so it's good to collaborate just to get your name and your business out there.
It's so true. I was thinking about, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Chicagoland Food and Beverage Network. It's this association in Chicago, and and do you know about the bigger table? I love those bigger table stories. So we were a part of one of those projects. So they were coming up with, there was a bunch of different people that were donating time on a line. So they made a hot chocolate, and it was intended to go to, it was going to food pantries. I can't remember exactly which ones, but so it was all based on donations of Chicagoland food companies. So some people donated the cocoa powder, like Edlong and Fona, we donated flavor. And that we worked on it together with competitors in the lab. Like it was amazing project. And the funny thing is it launched in like 6 months because of the collaboration. Usually a food development project takes 12 to 18 months to launch, especially with the big companies like Pepsi and Nestle's of the world. So this was fast and it had added protein. So there had to be masking and it was a complicated, kind of somewhat complex. So I wasn't sure I understood your question, but as everyone else was talking, I think I got it. But yeah, I think the food industry is so good about working together.
Well, and I wanted to add a little bit more about how Freight to Plate is inclusive and our food growing. Outside of just growing food from our farm, we sell the farm and we help communities operate and run their farm successfully. And part of a farm being successful is not just saying, here's the farm and you want to grow bib lettuce, kale, arugula, and these things are going to be really good for your health. We do a lot of work that when we place farms, we are placing farms with a community that has ties to the actual people that live there, and that they're doing a lot of research and sending out questionnaires and talking to the people that are actually going to be consuming the produce and what do they want. At our farm, we grow bok choy, arugula, kale, and that's really great for our chefs and the people that are buying produce from our farm. But there's farms that we place in other communities that we need to match the food that they're going to be comfortable eating, and then start to develop different things that we can grow for them. But I think really trying to talk as closely to the people that you're going to be impacting, that you're going to be working with upfront is super important, and we take that very seriously. And it's one of the ways that we try and stay inclusive, and not just say that we know best, but ask the community what they want.
Good question once I understood it. So Sarah, you know what I'm thinking, since we're running kind of late, should we maybe put our clock down and not do it and try to just stick it to like 1 or 2 people commenting?
Yeah, that sounds
Okay.
great. I will make those adjustments on the back end.
Okay, thank you. So now we are moving to Evelyn. Hi, Evelyn.
Hello, my name is Evelyn Baskin. I am in 6th grade and at Alcock Elementary School, and my business plan is Chicago Runners, a running platform / community that helps bring people together and run with each other during races, 5Ks and 15Ks. But my question was, if you felt that your business was mature enough and you reached the level of accomplishedness, and would you be willing to sell it at this point, and have you reached the level of accomplishment? And
Wow.
what does that level
Wait, what grade are you
look
in?
for
That's a
you?
crazy question. That was so good.
That's a great question.
That's a very mature question. I love it. But I'll let who's burning to answer this? Raise your hand. Okay, go for it. I think we only have probably time for one.
All right, I will make this fast. So just like anything else, there is a right time and a right place to sell a business, and your business has to be ready for that, as well as you have to have the right buyers and things to take it over. But you also have to understand what you want for it. I've known people who've sold their businesses to large corporations, and that large corporation ended up dissolving their life's work. They got money for it, business didn't last. I know people who've sold it and then they've gone into that company for a couple of years to make sure that business had the care and feeding it needed to go to the next level. You have to know what's most important to you at this particular point in time. Do you want to exit and go start something else? Is that the right time? Is it the best move for your shareholders? Is it a particularly good opportunity to kind of realize the total value of your business? There are so many questions that go into that. But like everything else that you do in building a business, there's no one straight answer. There's no one size fits all answer. It's pretty individual, and it's a lot about the right time and the right place and the right opportunity.
Fantastic. Anyone else burning there?
Well, just from a personal my personal take on that is it's such a good question, because almost immediately I'm like, well, yeah, if the right offer came in, of course I would sell it. But I think at Freight to Plate, we're still so young in our journey that I just feel like we have so much work to do that I'm not ready to give up on it yet or let go of that control. But I think the goal is that if it meant that our company could be more successful and reach more people, and selling was the right decision to do just that and get our mission out there, then, of course I'd consider it. I don't know if
When
Mary.
you bring in investors, you actually sell a piece of your business, right? And you're doing it based on what your goal is. Like you sell them on a vision. What is your intent? Where are you going with this? And what's their opportunity to make money from investing in your business? So they also want to know what your plans are and how they'll make a return. As a public company, people can invest in our company and then they can go sell the shares in the marketplace, the next day or the next hour if they want to. A public company you can go in and out of. A private company, you may bring on investors and tell them, look, our goal is to sell in 5 years. Well, you've made that commitment to some people. Is that still your goal? And if you get to 5 years and you still want to keep going, do you need to offer them a way out or a path out? And how do you finance it? It can get complicated.
Yeah. And I think to me, it's like we get sought after very often. We're the only woman-owned flavor company in the world, as we said before. And I don't know, that's a heart-wrenching question. And I feel like with my team, when we talk about it, I'm like, we haven't even hit our potential yet. To me, it's about hitting potential, and we still have a lot to do. Okay, I'm gonna keep us moving along. So thank you, Evelyn, great one. Elizabeth is up next.
So Elizabeth's internet went out, actually. So let's skip ahead to Jordan next.
Okay, perfect. Hi, Jordan.
Hi. My name is Jordan Feliciano, and I am the founder of Jordan Moore Slime. My slime is infused with different scents that support wellness, such as anxiety and ADHD with kids, but it's just fun for any kids to customize their own slime and their personality. My question is, what mistakes did you make on your journey of becoming an entrepreneur?
Go right ahead, whoever's feeling that one.
I think I've covered a lot of mine. I'm always happy to throw in some more, but Teresa, you got any?
I think you didn't chime in on the last one, so you get this one.
I feel like there's been so many. We'd have to extend this conference call to another day. I really feel like as an entrepreneur, you will learn from your mistakes. And I feel like, again, as Julia said, there are some mistakes you have to learn from them and be better at them. And then, so I'm trying to think, I don't know if there's one set of mistake that, I'm constantly, I guess maybe during Christmas time, I misquoted an order that I thought was only going to take me a couple hours to make these snowman cookies, and it took me hours, and I was up until 3 a.m. doing these cookies. So I don't know. I feel like
time management is a good one. I always think, and then it's back to the visual planning too. You got to block time in your life, or it's totally know what you're saying.
Yeah. Again, there's small mistakes and then there's large mistakes. And fortunately, I haven't had any where I've just oh my gosh, I've lost a lot of money or time or whatever. I'm right now, as we are entering into this new realm of entering to retailers, we are evaluating co-packers, and that is scary for me because I've heard so many horror stories of co-packers. So I hope a year from now, I'm not talking about that mistake. So
that's a good one.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest mistakes that you can make globally is not re-examining your thoughts about things at a particular point in time. Let me give you an example. We, as a company, have accomplished a lot. We're moving, along in a certain direction. There are a lot of things we know, but we're also always willing to re-examine our assumptions and to take a look back with new information and to make sure that given that new information, our direction and our strategy and what we're executing on is still the right move, because some things may have changed. And if we're using an old strategy on a different market, that may not work, right? So there's no pride of no, this is the way things are because this is what we decided a year ago. If things have changed, we need to be able to listen and need to be able to adapt. And if you don't do that, that's how you can make even bigger mistakes.
And listening to the people that are closest to the problem. That was one big one that I learned. I redid a operations room, and there was engineering and what have you, but we weren't listening to the guys that truly worked with the machines. And they hated it. And the intention was the opposite of that. We were trying to make it easier, user friendly for them, and kind of missed the fact that it increased their cleaning time by like triple, it just, so we pulled it all out and learned a big lesson. Good question. Okay. Sitlali, I think is next.
Hi, so I'm Sitlali Alanis, and I'm currently a junior at Fenwick High School in Oak Park. And my business name is HydroStar, which is a customizable water bottle business, where I would be designing custom water bottles to encourage positive mental health with motivational messages on them. And I would also be designing water bottles to cater to specific groups, clubs, events, and charities to kind of unite them as a group. And with this, I would be donating 25% of my profits to Hispanic outreach clubs and organizations. So being a junior in high school, college is really on my mind right now. And I really want to go to UChicago currently. So
I think there's someone here that might have some advice for you for that.
Yeah. So I noticed a lot of you guys have majored in economics or something related to that in college. So my question is, does majoring in economics help with starting a business? And if so, how has it like benefited you or like helped you?
I guess
That
I
was
should
for you,
on this one.
I think. Totally.
So again, I always had a creative outlet. Like I love painting and drawing, but again, my mom was like, what are you going to do with that afterwards? And so she's like, you should apply to University of Chicago and other business schools. And I got into University of Chicago. And I kind of did the route econ. I added statistics. I got to take a couple of like art classes, but I didn't really get to do a lot of art. And so, again, a lot of the things like I don't remember much what I learned in college. I probably shouldn't say that, but a lot of what I learned in college is very theoretical, especially at University of Chicago. A lot of our supply and demand was like beer and pizza, which again, I probably shouldn't say beer, but anyways, and I felt like that I learned most of through work experience, when I was in finance and doing real stuff, like looking at spreadsheets and stuff like that. So, I mean, I think it's important to go to a good college and get some foundation. But I think that, look at me, I ultimately did something completely different. I still, I still look at supply and demand in my business, stuff like that, but I don't do like fundamental, like economics, theoretical stuff that I learned in college.
Yeah, I'll go back to your communication skills are really, really important. Your fundamental things like tenacity are really, really important. Your background, your major, your degree, all of these are inputs and they may all be helpful, but as an entrepreneur, you will literally use every single skill you've ever learned in your entire life down to kindergarten with cutting and pasting. I swear to you, it will come in handy at one point in time. It literally pulls everything you have to give. And what I've seen is that people are successful with companies that has very little to do with where they went to college or what they majored in. It's a penchant for learning. It's the ability to communicate. It's the ability to never give up. It's the ability to be able to figure it out. Whatever it is, find a path and figure it out. Those are the most important things. And after that, what you actually study, to Teresa's point, study things you enjoy, study things that you think will help to further, your development and interest, whatever it is. If you want to develop medical devices, get a biotech degree. There are some things which require specific skill sets, like, you want to do something in engineering, you need to become an engineer. That are fundamental, but the core pieces of what it takes to do what we do every day have a lot to do with just your basic skills.
Critical thinking, I think they say that's
huge.
going to college, we really just learned how to learn, which is, and we learned how to live off of no money whatsoever and make mac and cheese. It's really important. My son, my oldest, one of my 27, went to, well, he played football for Ball State, and then he went to Madison and got an econ degree, and really smart guy. And he ended up getting, you know, a supply chain job and was utterly unhappy. Always was a very active kind of guy. And Teresa, when you were talking about art, he had a really bad breakup with a girlfriend, and he was living in Colorado and had to come home. And he's like, I just want to do woodworking. I want to do it. Like, he always was really good with his hands and artistic. And he is now doing woodworking and loving it. So making those beautiful, like, raw edge tables. And so I guess the moral of that story is follow your heart, and it will come to you.
And I'll just say I've had a very non-traditional journey to get me to being a co-founder of a business that I'm super passionate about. So I wouldn't let, you know, how you see everyone else living their lives and the steps that they're taking to get to where they need to go. Don't let that paint what you're going to do. Non-traditional is a-okay. And
Sometimes even better. Yeah. Good advice. It's all the experiences you take with you. So thank you. Good question. And next, we're almost to our last two here. Maya. Hi, Maya.
Hi, my name is Maya. I'm a freshman in high school. My business is called Cosmic Beauty. Cosmic Beauty is a cosmetics brand that incorporates space, like the beauty of space, with makeup. And my question is, what struggles did you face during startup?
I think, Jacqueline, I'd love to hear from you.
Sure. There's so many struggles with startup because there's just so many unknowns. And I think that's part of what makes a good entrepreneur or a good business owner is facing the unknowns and when I say unknowns, it's because there's things that you just could not be prepared for. And so I think as part of your entrepreneurial journey, it's just taking chances and trusting your gut, which I know we've said that a lot during this whole presentation, that, you know, trusting yourself and then using tenacity to just keep going, because sometimes some of the decisions that come up, you feel like you've met a dead end. And I can tell you from experience, it is not, there's no such thing as a dead end. There's always a way to, again, pivot or make another decision that will actually sometimes just be more beneficial to your business than maybe going the normal trajectory that you were on. So definitely trust yourself and don't stop at a dead end, just keep going.
Great advice. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
I'll just say, you know, doing something new and on your own, if you don't have a team around you when you're going into your entrepreneurial journey, is the feeling of imposter syndrome. And like, I know it's kind of, that imposter syndrome has been kind of, I don't know if it ever goes away. I think it comes in waves, at least for someone like me. Like I see it and then it's not there.
I agree. And I don't think that one is gender specific necessarily. I think it's a human condition, right?
For sure. And it's a huge struggle when you're first starting to do something. And again, to Jacqueline's point, when there's so many unknowns, that can make you feel even more like an imposter. But then circling back again to my sister, believing in yourself. And like Julia and Teresa have said, getting your network together. So even if you don't believe in yourself, you can at least talk to your network who are more likely gonna bolster you up. And
exactly, which is like the yay community, you know, it's like, sometimes you need to lean on each other and be like, is this a good business model? Do you guys think this makes any sense? You know, and leaning on that feedback and helping build that confidence, really.
It's another purpose for your network. You need a network that can help to support you. It's about the loneliest position you can take on, is starting and building a company. And if you get a business partner just for the sake of having one, they may not have the same focus on your business. They may not have the same objectives. I found that out the hard way with the business partner I took on because I thought I needed a business partner. And turns out that that actually created more problems because I made the wrong choice. And so just, that's also
But
something.
everyone's going to, it's like, don't ever go for 100% on the right choices of people. It's impossible, 80-20 is not bad.
Well, you get better at it, but
You do.
it's easier to make big mistakes than you think. And it's harder to let people go and to terminate relationships than you
Right.
think. And the longer,
I think that whole
quacks
loneliness
like a duck,
one-
it's a duck.
That's why what?
If it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Don't try to not make it a duck. It's a duck.
Yeah, I think we could do a whole hour on that one, so we'll just leave that right there, but good comment. Okay, and Kyla, thank you. Great question, Maya. I think Kyla might be our last one, unless, did you want to go back to Jordan, Sarah, or is she gone?
I'm right here.
Oh, okay.
Kyla's here, and we can go back to Elizabeth after this. Really
Oh,
quick.
is it Elizabeth I'm so sorry. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Hi, Kyla.
My name is Kylie Young. I attend Hawthorne Scholastic Academy. I'm currently in the 8th grade. My business is KMY Styles. My product will be Toolies, which is an elevated silk scarf that you can style in several different ways, such as a bracelet, a head wrap, and even much as a necktie. My question is, how do you build a successful customer base?
Good question. Who haven't we heard from enough lately? Jacqueline, you went off mute. I think you got a thought.
Sure. Well, something unique to Freight to Plate is that we bring our product directly into communities, but something we've found that's so important when we're developing a customer base is knowing your audience and making sure that you're messaging to the right person. There's so many times that you think of your product and you're like, how is it going to relate to my customer? And it's very, very important to take that and run with it. Like when you know who your customer is, customizing to their needs. And because Kyla, I love your business, by the way. I could use some silk hair products. So I would love to be a customer of yours. And I guess, so taking me to be a customer, I think a great way for you to market your product is showing like imagery would be helpful, like knowing all the different ways you can wear one silk product. And I think that's a really neat way of, so I think photography and having imagery around your product would be a great way to engage all different age and ethnicity groups.
Influencers. I could see influencers for her product too, and
absolutely social media.
All the way.
Thank you.
Oh, I was going to say, thinking outside the box. I mean, when I first thought about who our customers are, I decided to go through several different markets that most people weren't thinking of. So one was like wedding planners. So I basically compiled like a list from Wedding Channel or In the Knot, and I sent an email blast to them with a big cupcake. And I was like, I'd love to sit down with you to talk to you about Sugar Bliss. We're opening in the Loop. And Debbie Lilly, which was one of Oprah's party planners at the time, invited me and then put us on news a couple of times even before we opened the store. So kind of thinking outside, the box at that time, people weren't doing a lot of cupcakes with weddings at the time. Also, like hotels was another area where people are like constantly telling, Chicago has a huge tourism. So they'd be like, oh, go to Sugar Bliss. So what I did was I kind of did the old salesman method at the time. I went down on the east side of Michigan Avenue one day, dropped off cupcakes, and then I went on the west side. And lo and behold, we had a lot of different hotels that created house accounts because they didn't have pastry departments. And so they wanted to order like cupcakes and sweets for their VIP guests. So, I mean, I would say constantly think out the box of who your customers are, and not just kind of all your other competitors, what what their customers are.
Maybe like hair salons or something like that, you know? I think that's great. Like concierges for you, I think would be good, as you're saying, tourism, but it's really good advice of like opening your mind on where would these customers live? Okay, good question. And okay, Liz, are we up for Elizabeth then? Our last one.
Let's see. I think Elizabeth may have dropped off again, but we'll try to find her. Oh, there she is.
Yes, I'm actually on now. Yeah, so sorry. I had a lot of computer connectivity issues, and then my charger like started to.
Tenacity, Elizabeth.
Tenacity, it happens to the best of us. And it always happens like when you have a big meeting. So just, you know.
And I was like, this is the most inconvenient time for this to happen to me.
We get it. We get it. No worries.
Okay, so I'm Elizabeth, and I started a company called, which is also kind of a online bakery, which will be run in my local neighborhood, which is the High Park and Kenwood area. My question was, would you say that your work is mostly male dominated or female dominated? How has this affected your experience at the workplace?
Good question.
So one of the things that we've seen in the food industry and startup and emerging companies is about half of them are created by and started by women and diverse entrepreneurs, if not more than half of them. But as they take in capital and start to scale, the women have been getting pushed out of the key roles. And again, a lot of this has to do with the network effect. So, you know, about 95% of venture capital, which is what plays in the growth of the food industry a lot of times, is, you know, controlled by men and not very diverse men, mostly Caucasian men. Their networks tend to look like them. And so as they put money into the companies and get a board position and start trying to really grow the companies, often, you know, they bring in new people to the roles that look like them. And so the women and the diverse entrepreneurs start getting pushed into other roles like product development or marketing, but not leading those companies. So it is something that we see this kind of evolution towards something that starts like one thing and ends up looking like another. There's not really a reason for that except for who is in people's networks and how do they know. And by the way, this isn't always malicious or ill intent, but it's who they know. And a lot of what you'll find as you grow and develop your career, it's about who you know, who your network is, who are you spending time with, who are you looking to bring into your companies, who are you selling to, and the rest. So if you make a commitment to diversity, you know, that becomes as self-fulfilling as not doing so.
And I think something I'm thinking as you're speaking, which I totally agree with, is we had a conversation on one of the podcasts about getting the seat at the table. And definitely my industry is, as I said, I'm the only woman owned in the world of flavor companies. So it's incredibly male dominated by owners that are all men. I sit around a board of governors table of one of our associations called the Flavor and Extract Manufacturers Association. I'm the one of the very first women ever to be around that table. I think there's been 5 of us in 125 years. But back to that board, one of the hard things is I knew I wanted to be sitting around that table since I was very young. And then you get the seat, and then back to the imposter syndrome comment. So now I have a seat at the table. Now I got to speak, and you can't just be quiet. You got to get brave and, you know, find your words, because it's when you're in those rooms, it's easy to go invisible, at least for me. Like I have to talk into my own ear and be like, just say it. You know, there's nothing wrong, just say it. And it takes practice. And the more and more you do it, the easier it gets, I think, to speak at those tables. And again, it's back to just having confidence of what I'm saying matters. So great question. Anyone else want to chime in on that?
Well, Laurette, I just want to thumbs up your practice makes it a lot easier. So don't be scared to take your practice shot at any moment in any room.
What could go wrong? Nothing.
Exactly.
Yes, thank you. I think that's a great question to end on too, because that's exactly why Female Strong exists and the CA program exists, because no pressure, you guys, but we're depending on you all to be the future leaders. That's why we're here, and really, you know, trying to give you anything we can give you to help you. And definitely, I'd say all of us are available for you to reach out to. And it's been really great to hear about what you're working on. And And all of you all would be amazing shark investor panelists, because exactly what we did here, this is these guys are going to hone their businesses, and then they're going to compete for who's, you know, going to go off to national and who's going to get funding for their business. So it's amazing to see this live. It's exactly what really pulled me into Female Strong in the EA program is these young women. So I think with that, Sarah, it's back to you, lady, huh?
All right. Well,
Only
let's all.
15 minutes late. I was trying.
No, you did amazing. I know all of you, that probably felt like both a marathon and a sprint. So congratulations to our speakers. Let's celebrate them in the chat. And students, you did a great job too. Great questions. Thank you for so confidently presenting your business concepts. And now I just want to show everyone a couple of upcoming events that would be great for you to attend. So Laurette just gave us a wonderful intro to our Shark Tank investor panel on March 21st. This is the first time in 3 years we're able to do this in person again. So we're really thrilled about that. And we'll be hosting that at the Knoll Showroom down in Fulton Market. And we'll also be live streaming it for those who can't attend in person. And at that event, you will see all of these students present their full business plan with speech cards, with a PowerPoint, and they'll do a great job. So join us for that. And if you want to be a shark on that panel, we have a couple spots open, as Laurette implied. So feel free to take one of those spots. We also have a really great young professionals program for adults, and they are hosting a series of great events this year. Their first one is happening on March 13th. It's in person, and it's a Nail Your Niche program. So I will put all the information for that in the chat, and you can read more about it there. We're also going to host a couple more of these CEO roundtables this year, one in May and one in September. So stay tuned for more details about that. And if you were wondering how you can support Female Strong, I know that's the burning question on everyone's minds. So if you're wondering about that, here are several ways you can get involved with us. You can attend our events. You can host your own camp with your company for students ages 8 to 12 years old. We have a really great one-day camp that we're offering to corporate partners. You can find more information about that on our website. You can become a recurring monthly donor, which is probably the best thing you could do to make our days better. You could also sponsor or mentor a student. So lots of great options there. Every one of the students you've met tonight has one adult business mentor that they meet with every week for feedback on their business plan and their business concept. And it's been hugely vital in their success in the program. You can also subscribe to our newsletter. I mean, that's free. That's so easy. And you can follow us on socials. So all of that information is in the chat. Please support Female Strong and keep coming to these events. We really love to see our whole community come out. And thank you again so much to all of you speakers for giving us your time and expertise. I just can't believe how many questions we got through tonight. I'm just blown away.
Amazing.
So
hey, Sarah, is there a video that you showed at the board meeting today on the camp on the website yet? Probably.
Oh, the bear camp? It's on our YouTube. I will share that one as well.
It is
I'll
so
send
good,
that
you guys. It was the first time I saw it, but it really, these one-day camps that people are doing at their corporations for the girls 8 to 12, phenomenal. They do this like dance thing, they do vision boards, they do it. Yeah, it looks really, really good. So that's a really cool way to do that for your company. And the, you know, you could either have it be the daughters of your employees or do it in a group with a couple different companies together. So love that one.
Absolutely.
Thank you for inviting me. This was awesome, Sarah. I loved it. It was really nice to meet all these panelists and really cool companies and love the food industry. This was so fun. So next time it'll, you know, maybe it'll be tech or something, but I like that concept.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We will give you back your evening. I know we ran over, but it was well worth it. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.